How's it going, everybody? My name is Salty and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 most underrated weapons here in Black Ops Cold War. Now, first I want to say that every single primary weapon in this game, in my opinion, is viable in some sort of sense. Every single player plays differently, everybody has different play styles, so your list may be totally different than mine. With that being said, all the weapons that I put on this list I consider to be off meta. So if you see some weapons that you think I missed, just consider that maybe I think that weapon is meta, or maybe I don't think it's that good of a weapon as a whole. But like I said, there's going to be some weapons that you agree and disagree with, but these are the best class setups that I'm going to have for each and every one of these choices. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, let me just say that these weapons are in zero particular order. I just picked 10 of the weapons that I like using the most that I feel are considered off meta. So without further ado, we're going to jump over here. We have the FFAR. This weapon is extremely good at close and medium range with that fast fire rate, and with the right attachments, it has little to no recoil to control. FFAR was a weapon that was extremely good when the game first came out. It was actually so good that it needed to be nerfed because the pros refused to use it. And that says a lot because the weapon isn't in the best state it once was, but it is still extremely viable. So starting in the muzzle here, the infantry compensator, you're going to need this on the FFAR. It has some crazy recoil control patterns, but between this and the underbarrel, it is very, very manageable. For the barrel, this was an attachment that was given to me by a subscriber. I don't really like to use the takedown barrel really on anything, but the takedown barrel here gives you 80% effective damage range. It gives you 22.86 meters in that category here. If you were to take that off, you can see that it's at just an absolutely abysmal 12.7 meter effective damage range here, which is just not on par with other assault rifles. This 22.86 meters is definitely the go-to. The bullet velocity sits at 629 meters per second, which is still very good for taking medium range gunfights. Sliding down to the underbarrel I was referring to, you're going to need the field agent grip. Vertical and horizontal recoil control are a must here on the FFAR. I'm sure if you've used it and you didn't use the right attachments, you'd have been like, what the heck is wrong with this weapon? It's shooting into the sky, it's shooting to the right. Between this and the infantry compensator, very manageable recoil. For the magazine, we have the Stanag 44 round mag. This is really just a preferencing for me. I like to have the most bullets into my magazine as possible, almost 100% of the time, to be honest, just because I feel safer that way. But you can really go with any. You can go with the 38 round mag, jungle mag, SAS clamp. I do not recommend going with the speed mags though, because you will be sacrificing too much aim down sight speed at that point. Then finishing us off, we have the Raider stock. Like I said, it is an aggressive assault rifle, so you're going to need the most amount of sprint to fire speed here. We also get 40% added to our aim walking movement speed. This is a class setup I highly recommend you give it a go. Let's slide over to the next weapon. For our next weapon, I have the BULLFROG. The BULLFROG has never been considered a meta in Black Ops Cold War simply because the damage output does not match the rest of the weapons in the game. You would think that because it has a lot of bullets, it would end up being a viable option. But when you compete with the LC-10, the AK-74U, and the Tech-9, you can see where it just does not fit into the meta. They're all faster killing than this, but the BULLFROG is still a very viable option, especially in hardcore with all those bullets. If you're playing on hardcore Nuketown, this thing is extremely good. But in core, definitely competes. So sliding over here, I like to use the GRU suppressor. We get some vertical recoil control, but most importantly, the ability to stay off the map hidden from enemies. I do not like to be red dot chased everywhere, especially when I'm trying to go for a nuclear or just keep a streak alive. For the barrel, we have the 7.4-inch task force. In my opinion, this is the attachment that really makes the weapon overall a little more viable because you get damage, effective damage range, and bullet velocity. It brings our damage up to 35, 23 meter effective damage range, and then 437.6 meter per second bullet velocity. Now, because we're going with the task force barrel, you're going to need some recoil control. We have the Spetsnaz grip, 6% vertical and 20% horizontal recoil control here. You are losing some shoot moving speed, but without this, it would be a little difficult to use. You can definitely take some medium range gunfights with the BULLFROG due to the lack of recoil control needed while running the Spetsnaz grip. On top of that with the GRU suppressor. Sliding down, I'm not going with a magazine here. It doesn't need it. It has 50 bullets in that magazine stock, and that's one of the biggest assets, in my opinion, to the BULLFROG, is you don't need to waste that attachment slot on a magazine. So we're going right down to the handle here with the GRU elastic wrap. Gives you extremely snappy aim, one of the fastest ADS weapons in the game next to the MP5 and the Lapa. This thing is absolutely nuts when it comes to that aim down sight speed. You also get that ability to drop shot and then flinch resistance. Then the stock, we have the KGB Scout Tool. Just like the FFAR, if you're going to be playing aggressive, you need that sprint to fire speed to get your weapon up as fast as possible and shoot. And just like the FFAR, again, we got that aim walking movement speed as an added bonus there. I really would love to hear your opinion of the Bullfrog down in the comment section. It's one of the most popular weapons and most requested on my channel. So this is my go-to class setup. If you guys are curious, let's jump on to the next weapon. For our next weapon, we have the MAC-10. Now, the MAC-10, I personally do not consider a meta. Some people may disagree with me here, but at close range, it is the best weapon in the game in the SMG category just because of that fire rate. But it just lacks viability in a lot of other ranges. You can't really take medium range gunfights and expect to win the gunfight as a whole. It's a much harder weapon to be accurate with because of the fire rate and because of the overall recoil control of the weapon. And just on top of that, the effective damage range is not really on par to compete with something like a 74U or really any AR at medium range. That's why I consider it not a meta. But sliding down here, we have no muzzle, but right for the barrel, we need that 5.3 inch Ranger. Like I said, we do use this weapon at close range, nothing better than it. But if you do get into a situation where you need to take some medium range gunfights, the bullet velocity is very lacking on the MAC-10. This brings it up to 400 meters per second. Will definitely make it a little easier to take some longer range gunfights, strictly because your bullets will connect a little quicker. For the underbarrel, we need the field agent grip for both vertical and horizontal recoil control. One of the biggest misconceptions with the MAC-10 is that the recoil control shoots up into the sky. That is not the case. The horizontal recoil control outweighs the vertical by a ton. So the field agent grip gives us the most horizontal recoil control here, but on top of that, we also get 8% in that vertical. I highly recommend that you give this a go. If you're controlling recoil just fine, the FFAR speed grip is another good option here, 10% vertical and 10% horizontal, but personally, I like to use that field agent. For the magazine, we have the 53 round drum. Most amount of bullets into our magazine, but we're not sacrificing too much aim down sight speed here in the process. 53 bullets is a lot, even though it's fast firing, and that reload time really isn't all that slow, to be honest. Now to the handle, airborne elastic wrap, most amount of aim down sight speed. We got the flinch resistance, which will 100% be needed if you get into those medium range engagements, and then the ability to drop shot as always, and then finishing us off, Raider stock, most amount of sprint to fire speed, and then the 10% added to our aim walking movement speed as well. I have some great success on smaller maps with the MAC-10, but once you start playing maps like the Pines, you got even maps like Miami, Diesel, you really will find some hard times just because of the longer range engagements. There are places that you can play close on those maps, but it just becomes a little less viable. Let's jump on to the next weapon. For the next weapon on our list here, I have the DMR-14, an extremely underrated option in my opinion. Has the ability to choose shot and an extremely fast fire rate for a semi-automatic tactical rifle. This thing is extremely good, and in my opinion is the best tactical rifle in the game, but I don't think any of the tactical rifles really sit in a viable meta spot. They're all usable, but when you're competing against some faster killing assault rifles and SMGs, I just don't think it has a spot in the meta, and that's why you never really saw any of them used in the pro scene. Once the M16 and the AUG were nerfed, I believe the DMR also received a nerf. They were really just kicked out of the meta pretty quickly. So let's get on to this class setup here. Vigitech 2x on all my tactical rifles. I like to use the 2x scope. It just feels like my bullets connect extremely well. And on top of that, you have this ability to take longer range gunfights because you can be a little more accurate at longer ranges with a semi-automatic tactical rifle. For the muzzle, I have the agency silencer here. This is just a preference for me. We get the vertical recoil control, of course, but the ability to stay off the map is kind of a big deal for me, just because, as you guys know, I'm a gameplay YouTuber. I like to go for nuclears and go for long streaks, so this just makes it a little easier for me. If you guys are more into that aggressive play, you can definitely go with the infantry compensator here. You get 25% vertical recoil control, which is pretty good, but you're not sacrificing any of the bullet velocity like the agency silencer does. Now down to the barrel, I have the 17.1 inch strike team, 24% damage. This is a must for the barrel here. We also get 13% fire rate, which is a big deal, but that damage is the big one. You can 2-shot kill with this barrel as long as you're hitting 1 headshot. So this is the barrel. You can go with the task force here, but just know your recoil gets a little bouncy when you start to spam the trigger. But between the strike team and the task force, those are the barrels you need to run. For the body, I have the SOF target designator. Another preference attachment here for me. Makes it easier to see my targets while aiming down the sights. For the underbarrel, you're going to need the field agent grip because you're spamming that trigger so fast. This will make it much easier to just have the gun with 0 recoil at all. It's very, very easy to use when you combine the muzzle and the field agent grip. For the magazine, I have the 30 round mag. We're gaining some extra bullets into this magazine, but we're not sacrificing any aim down sight speed in return, which is going to be a plus. If you get into a close range engagement with the DMR, I would say close to medium range, you're going to need snapping aim. So just keep that in mind. You guys can use whatever magazine you want here on this build, but I like to use the 30 round mag. For the handle, airborne elastic wrap, just like always, We get the most amount of aim down sight speed, the flinch resistance, and ability drop shot. I don't think I've ever once drop shotted with a DMR, but the option's there if I need to. For the stock, we're going with the Raider, just like always. Most amount of sprint and fire speed. 40% added to our aim walking movement speed. I know a lot of people dislike semi-automatic tactical rifles just because they're a little harder to use, but if you have very good accuracy, I highly recommend you give this one a go. It may just become one of your favorite weapons into the game. Let's jump over on to our next weapon. On to our next weapon, I have the M60. The only LMG that I would consider to be in the meta is going to be the Stoner 63, just because of the overall viability of the weapon at all ranges. The MG82 could technically be considered in that meta, but it just lacks that distance, in my opinion. The effective damage range is very, very bad on the MG. But like I said, in my opinion, the Stoner is the only one that really reaches that meta category. It's been there since the game launched. But the M60 is another viable option here. It kills extremely fast, but it's the slowest moving LMG in the game. If you're a slow-paced player, this could be the weapon for you. So let's jump into the class setup here that gives it the most amount of damage, just the best time you're going to have really using the M60. Starting Vision Tech 2 times, just like the tactical rifles. I enjoy using it. It feels like my bullets connect extremely well, and it will make it easier to hit some longer range engagements. For the muzzle, we have the infantry compensator, 15% vertical recoil control. Definitely needed when you see all the attachments combined together. This is more or less a max damage, no recoil build. A lot of people like to use a silencer here, but I disagree. You're sacrificing 30% effective damage range and 25% bullet velocity, bringing our effective damage range down to 43 from over 50 meters there. For the barrel, you need the 22.8-inch task force. There's not a better barrel option for basically all the LMGs. You're gaining damage, effective damage range, and bullet velocity. So we're gaining 50, we're up to 55 damage. That is a 3-shot kill, which is extremely good for LMGs. It can potentially be a 2-shot kill if you hit them in the head from a certain distance. I believe you have to hit 2 consecutive headshots for it to be a 2-shot kill, but that's still a 2-shot kill. That's very fast in this game. We're up to, like I said, a 50 effective damage range, and now we have a 1096 meter per second bullet velocity. For the body, we have the SOF target designator. Again, a preference, just makes it easier to see my targets while aiming down the sights. Sliding down here, we have the underbarrel field agent grip. Like I said, we're going for a 0 recoil build, 8% vertical, 30% horizontal recoil control here. Now for the magazine, the Vandal speed loader. This is just a preference for me. You can go with the 100-round mag if you so please, but I'm an aggressive player. I like to just reload and get back into the action. But the big thing is here, we're not sacrificing aim down sight speed. You do not want to sacrifice any aim down sight speed with LMGs. It's already extremely slow. For the handle of the airborne elastic wrap, you need the most amount of aim down sight speed because of how slow the aim down sight speed really is. Flinch resistance, ability to drop shot, and then finishing us off, Raider stock, 30% sprint to fire speed, and 40% aim walking movement speed. This is a weapon that has an acquired taste. I understand a lot of people do not like it, but I also understand there's a big fan base of people who truly do love this thing. But let's jump on to the next weapon. Not much more to say. For my next selection here, I have the GROZA. It's been a love-hate relationship with the GROZA for me. When it first came out, I really despised it. But once they buff the thing up a bit, it's extremely good. And this is going to be a sneak peek at one of my upcoming videos. So make sure you guys have your notifications on so you don't miss that. GROZA is going to be coming out very soon. But let's start with the barrel here. 16.5-inch CMV mil spec. We're gaining damage and movement speed. The GROZA is best used as somewhat like an SMG, somewhat like an FFAR, and it's very viable at close and medium range. So with our base statistics here, bringing our damage up to 36, our effective damage range is at 32, which is very, very, very good. That's above the FFAR, but we're also gaining movement speeds. We are sacrificing effective damage range, believe it or not, but it's still at a 32. That's extremely good for a fast-paced assault rifle. We don't have any body, but right down to the underbarrel, this is an attachment that did get buffed. We have the Spetsnaz grip, 15% vertical and 25% horizontal recoil control. This will give the weapon basically 0 recoil whatsoever. Highly vouch for this attachment. There's not really a better one here. It gives you the ability to not run a muzzle, so you can run 5 attachments on your weapon. For the magazine, I have the Spetsnaz 50-round drum. You guys can really use whatever you want here. If you're playing on a big map, playing a little slower, you can definitely drop down to that 40-round drum. But like I said, this is my preference. I like to have the most amount of bullets into my magazine as possible. For the handle, the GRU elastic wrap, most amount of aim down sight speed, ability to drop shot, and then the flinch resistance. And another buffed attachment here, we have the KGB pad, 50% sprint to fire speed. This is what gives it that ability to play extremely aggressive. You can get the gun up and shoot almost instantly, and then 40% also to our aim walking movement speed. I feel like the GROZA is a weapon that just doesn't get talked about much because, like I said, these are all weapons that are out of the meta, and I feel like in Cold War specifically, out of the meta, the weapons just don't really get much love, but in my personal opinion, I hate using the same weapon. I hate using the meta weapons over and over again, and I like to experiment a lot, and that's why I supply some different class setups to you guys. But like I said, the GROZA I've become much in love with. It's an extremely fun weapon to use. Definitely give this one a go. Now we're going to slide on to our next SMG on the list. Up next, we have the KSP. Now, the KSP is much like the MAC-10. It really thrives at close range, but once you leave that close range category, it kind of loses its viability. But as you know, I'm sure you've been one bursted by a KSP at close range. It's extremely annoying because you're just like, wait a minute, how did I just die? I feel like I just got insta-kill. Well, the KSP does that. It has some crazy damage. So we're going to start here in the class setup. I have the 9.5-inch Ranger, 50 damage. You don't need any more damage added here. 15.24 meter effective damage range, which is stock of very good. But so the only really thing we needed to add was bullet velocity. This brings it up to 530 meters per second. This will give you the ability to take medium range gunfights. However, don't recommend you do so. I highly recommend you keep in the close range with this thing. For the underbarrel, I have the field agent grip. Gives it zero recoil whatsoever. And as you know, it does like to bounce a bit, especially when you start spamming the trigger and the bursts start to go. So the field agent grip is definitely a must here. For the magazine, 42 bullets is actually quite a bit into your magazine, especially as a burst weapon. So this does not sacrifice any aim down sight speed here. Reload quickness really isn't all that big of a deal. It's actually quite fast in my opinion, especially for a stock reload. But we are gaining some extra bullets there, which is the important thing. For the handle, airborne elastic wrap, pretty common theme here. Most amount of aim down sight speed, flinch resistance, ability to drop shot, and again, another pretty important attachment, Raider stock. Most amount of sprint to fire speed, and then of course, aim walking movement speed. Another weapon that I feel gets some hate, and another weapon that has like an acquired taste to it, just because it's a little more difficult to use. But as you know, I have some of my best gameplays on this channel that was done with the KSP. It's a very good weapon on Nuketown, Crossroads Strike, Miami Strike, just the small maps, and I definitely recommend you give the class setup a go. We're now going to slide on to our second tactical rifle on the list. Now with the last tactical rifle on the list here, we have the M16. In my opinion, it is the most viable of the burst tactical rifles in the game. This is the best between the AUG, the Carve, and then of course the M16 is also on that list. So the M16, in my opinion, just packs a punch. It has great effective damage range, and overall, it just feels like it hits like a truck. It's a little slower paced, but if you are a slower paced player, medium and long range gunfights will be your best friend because you're just going to get one burst kill after one burst kill as long as you're accurate. So let's go here. We have the Vigitech 2 times. I've already stated it. Really like using that on my tactical rifles and LMGs. For the muzzle here, we have the infantry compensator, 25% vertical recoil control. I feel like I don't need to say anything here. 25% added to your vertical recoil control is a ton, especially for a burst rifle where your weapon likes to recenter after shooting the burst. For the barrel, the 20.5-inch task force, we gain 14% damage, 50% effective damage range and bullet velocity, but that damage is up to 57, which means you're going to one burst as long as you hit every single bullet that you shoot. And that's up to 32 meters. That's a really far one burst kill. And then our bullet velocity is 1,087.6 meters per second. The M16 received an effective damage range nerf just because it used to be, believe it or not, around 60 meters with the task force barrel when this game first came out, and that became a big issue. People were running thermals and sitting in their spawn and just one bursting people across the map. So as you know, that's why the M16 is no longer all that viable. It is viable, but it's not a meta. This thing would be an extremely annoying meta if they never nerfed it. So down to the body, we have the SOF target designator. This is going to be to make it easier to see your targets while aiming down the sights. Field agent grip, I feel like this has been a pretty common theme. I like to have my weapons with no recoil. It just makes it easier to use. One less thing to think about, but we get 10% vertical and 40% horizontal recoil control here. Sliding down to our magazine, we have the 54 round mag. Most amount of bullets into our magazine, not sacrificing too much aim down sight speed. Not much really needed to say here. Airborne elastic wrap, like always for our handle here. We get the most amount of aim down sight speed, flinch resistance, and ability to drop shot. And then the Raider pad, another pretty common attachment on this list. We get 30% to our sprint to fire speed, and then 40% added to our aim walking movement speed. M16 is an extremely fun weapon. Do not use this thing up close and personal, people. You will lose, you will get frustrated, and I promise you it will not be a fun time. If you're a person that likes to sit back, medium map, play domination on B flag, pick people off as they leave their spawn, this is a great weapon for you. You're going to find a lot of success. Now let's jump over into our next assault rifle on this list. So many of you that have been watching the channel know I'm a big advocate of the FAR 83 and this particular build. It's treated like an FFAR, and in my opinion, it might just be a little better just because the weapon feels extremely easy to use. Let's start here. This class setup was given to me about a year ago by a subscriber. So if you guys ever have any class setups you think I'd like, please feel free to put them down in the comment section. I use every single class setup that you guys put down there just because I know it could be my next favorite thing. Just because you don't see a video on it doesn't mean I did not give it a try. So please do so. Starting here, we have the GROZA suppressor. It's an aggressive assault rifle, so I like to stay off my map to make it easier to streak up, but we also get vertical recoil control. For the barrel, 14.8-inch ultralight. We're gaining a ton of movement speed here in the form of strafe and aim walking movement speeds, which gives it that viability as somewhat like an SMG AR hybrid, or if you guys know the Peacekeeper back from BO2, BO3, BO4, it's kind of like the same thing in my opinion. We're not doing an underbarrel. It has very little recoil in my opinion, and all the vertical is taken care of with the muzzle. For the magazine, the Spetsnaz 50 round. This is going to be for the most amount of bullets into our magazine, but we're not sacrificing too much aim down sight speed here. You can go with whatever you want. I'm going to be honest. Choose whatever magazine you feel comfortable with because we are definitely running a handle here. Through elastic wrap, so you're not going to really need to sacrifice too much. I mean, if you want to go with the 50 round fast mag there and sacrifice 25%, all to you. It's still going to be pretty viable. The Grew elastic wrap, most amount of aim down sight speed, flinch resistance, ability to drop shot, and then we have the KGB skeletal stock for 30% added to our sprint to fire speed, and then 40% to our aim walking movement speed. We're going to jump over to our final weapon now. In our final weapon slot here, I have the QBZ. Not my favorite weapon, but I know how popular it is, and I know it is a very viable option. Personally, I don't like it just because it kind of reminds me of just like a less good XM4, but I know a lot of people like it. Has little to no recoil, and it's just an absolute blast to use. So we have the Microflex LED to start here. You guys can run the iron sights if you so choose. I personally don't like the iron sights. I don't like circular iron sights, and just my personal preference. I prefer more of an open-sighted kind of thing, especially in assault rifles. On SMG, closed sights are fine just because it's in the close range, but it makes it a little harder to take some longer range gunfights with a closed iron sight. So if you guys really want to go with that iron sight, definitely recommend throwing on the airborne elastic wrap here, but I do not. For the barrel, we need the 16.5-inch Ranger. We have a great effective damage range at 45.72. This brings our bullet velocity up to 1,342 meters per second. That puts it on par with the XM4, like I said. So for the underbarrel field agent grip, this is our only recoil control attachment. We get 3% vertical and 16% horizontal recoil control. For the magazine, the 50 round drum. Now, the 50 round drum here, we're not sacrificing too much aim down sight speed, but at the same time, filling up that ammo capacity. Now, you guys can use the 40 round drum, the jungle style mag, and the SAS mag clamp, but do not go with the speed mags here. You're sacrificing too much aim down sight speed. You'll kind of be like a slug on the map. Now, for the stock, the Raider, like always, most amount of sprint to fire speed here, and then 40% added to our aim walking movement speed. I'd be really curious to hear what you think of my list. Be really curious to hear your top 10 underrated weapons here in Black Ops Cold War. That being said, there's not going to be any gameplay, but I will have some class setups and videos on each and every one of these weapons. So make sure you guys turn on the notifications, subscribe if you're new, like the video if you learned or liked anything about it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you could make sure you hit that like button for me, that'd be absolutely awesome. If you're new to the channel, make sure you also smash that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video.